Welcome back to Is It Science or Spirituality? I'm so glad you're here for this episode. Quick question before we dive in. How did the previous episodes practices go? Did you practice the box breathing? Did you practice the 478? Did you notice anything shift? Love to hear about it, but more importantly, I hope you noticed for yourself that something as simple as changing your breath can genuinely change how you feel. That's the whole point of this podcast. These aren't just interesting ideas, these are tools that you can use in your daily life. Alright, today we are looking at something that might seem even more surprising. So here's today's statement. Loving kindness toward yourself improves physical health. Again, what's your first reaction? Does that sound like spiritual fluff? Like something you would see on an Instagram post with a sunset background? Or does it sound something like that could hold up in a laboratory? I'll be honest, the first time I heard this, I was skeptical. I grew up in a culture that praised being hard on yourself. You know the voice. Stop being lazy. You're not good enough. Other people have it worse. Stop complaining. If you're kind to yourself, you'll become weak and self-indulgent. And I thought these statements were true. I thought being harsh with myself was somehow motivating. Turned out, it was just exhausting. And more than that, it was actually making me sick, literally. Here's what changed my mind. I was going through a really difficult period and I noticed I was constantly getting colds, headaches, digestive issues. As someone suggested, I try mindfulness-based practices. And I tried a couple of mindfulness-based practices before as well. So I was kind of, yes, I am open to these. And they said, I think you need to look at self-compassion. I thought it was ridiculous. Of course, self-compassion. But I was desperate, so I tried it. And within few weeks of trying it, I felt slightly different because you are practicing something which is so unique and so new that you feel different. Not just emotionally, but also physically. A little bit more energy was present. Slightly better sleeping patterns. My body just felt less on fire and less under attack. And that's when I started to notice what this could be. And the only thing that literally changed in my life was this kind of practice of introspection through self-compassion. And that's when I started to dig into the research. And what I found completely changed how I understood the relationship between, if you want to call it, our mind and body. For me, it's the same, but for context. For the scientific community, it's still kind of separate. So for context, let's look at mind and body as separate in these discussions for now. So, whatever your answer would be, is it spiritual, is it science? It is up to you to investigate. But in my opinion, the answer is both. This is both a spiritual wisdom and rigorously tested, validated science. And the evidence is actually absolutely stunning. So let's start with the spiritual roots. The practice of metta, that's the Pali word for loving kindness, goes back around 2,500 years ago to Buddha's teachings. This wasn't just being nice. It was a specific meditation practice designed to cultivate unconditional love, goodwill, starting with yourself, then extending to others. The traditional metta phrases are, may I be happy, May I be healthy. May I be safe. May I be at ease. You'd repeat these first for yourself, then for someone else, then for someone you love, then for a neutral person. And when you've practiced enough, you can even practice this with someone difficult. And finally, for all beings everywhere. So here's the question: why do we start with ourselves? Because the Buddha recognized something profound. You can't genuinely wish others well if you are constantly at war with yourself. Self-kindness is not selfish. It's the foundation. And this wasn't unique to Buddhism though. In Christianity, there's love your neighbors as yourself, which implies you should love yourself. In Hindu traditions, self-love is seen as recognizing the divine within. Across spiritual traditions, the message is consistent. Harsh self-judgment creates suffering. Compassion heals. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Starting in the early 2000s, a psychologist by the name of Dr. Kristen Neff, began studying self-compassion scientifically. Not just does it make you feel better, but does it change measurable health outcomes? And the answer was yes. Dramatically, yes. Studies started showing that people who practice self-compassion have lower levels of cortisol, that's your stress hormone, higher heart rate variability, a key marker of nervous system health. So if your heart rate is variable, that means your nervous system is very active. If your heart rate is not variable, steady, then it's kind of like the nervous system is completely overactive or underactive. Reduced inflammation markers in the blood. Inflammation is linked to almost a lot of chronic diseases. Better immune function. They literally get sick less often. Improved cardiovascular health. And let's go back. These are just practices that you simply practice with yourself. These are words you are going to say to yourself. And then came this really stunning research. A study found that people who practice loving kindness meditation have something called longer telomeres. Now, telomeres are the protective caps on your chromosomes. So when they are shorter, your cells age faster. And self-compassion was literally showing cellular aging. Self-compassion was literally slowing aging on a cellular level. And again, there was another research which said that loving kindness practice increased the vagal tone. Remember that from last time's episode on breath, vagus nerve again. Higher vagal tone means better emotional regulation, better physical health. The mechanical properties is actually kind of straightforward. When you're harsh and critical with yourself, your brain interprets that as a threat. Your amygdala activates, that's your fear center. Cortisol spikes. Your body goes into stress mode. And if that's chronic, if you're always beating yourself up, your body stays in chronic stress, which leads to chronic diseases. But when you speak to yourself with kindness, your brain's care system activates. Oxytocin releases. That's the bonding hormone. Your parasympathetic nervous system changes and engages. Your body gets the message: we are safe, we are cared for. and healing process begins. The spiritual teachers knew this through direct observation, as always. Scientists kind of proved it with tests and scans. Same truths, different language. But let's break down both perspectives more deeply, because understanding that can genuinely change your life. So, when Buddhist teachers talk about metta, they're addressing something fundamental about our suffering. Most of us walk around with this harsh inner critic, a voice that judges, condemns, compares, and finds us lacking. That voice causes immense suffering. The practice isn't about replacing self criticism with fake positivity or self indulgence. It's not about saying, I'm perfect, I never make mistakes, everything I do is great. That's delusion. And Buddhism is very clear eyed about delusion. Instead, this is about recognizing your common humanity. You may be flawed because you're human. You make mistakes because everyone makes mistakes. You suffer because suffering is part of the human condition. So, when you can hold your own pain with the same compassion you'd offer a good friend, a practice which is fascinating, without judgment, without trying to fix it, just with gentle acknowledgement, something shifts. The pain doesn't necessarily go away, but the suffering around the pain decreases. The traditional metta practice, or the old way to do it, has a beautiful structure. It starts with yourself. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be safe. May I be peaceful. And for many people, this is actually the hardest part. It's easier to wish others well than wish ourselves well. I invite you to check that if it is true for you. Then it moves on to someone you love. Easy. Then to someone who's neutral. Bit harder. Then to someone difficult. Really hard. And to finally, all beings everywhere. So why is it in this sort of progression? Because it's training. You're literally building new neural pathways of compassion. That's the brain wiring. You start where it's easiest, yourself, or it's too hard, someone you love, and gradually expand your capacity. The spiritual insight is that the separation is the root of suffering. When you see yourself as fundamentally separate, defective, unworthy, you suffer. When you recognize you are shared in humanity in fundamental ways, despite all the flaws, there's this ease. And this isn't any abstract philosophy. Teachers discovered this through practice. Thousands and thousands, if not millions and billions of meditators over thousands of years independently reporting the same thing again and again. Self-compassion reduces suffering and creates well-being. Now, when we look at the other side of the scientific aspect, it's remarkably consistent with spiritual teachings. First, self-kindness versus self-judgment. When things go wrong, do you beat yourself up or treat yourself like you treat a friend? Second, aspect of self-compassion from a scientific perspective, they check for common humanity versus isolation. Do you see yourself as part of the struggle, as proof you are uniquely flawed, or as part of being human? Third, mindfulness over identification. Can you acknowledge pain without drowning in it or pushing it away? And here's what is really fascinating. These three components map directly into the biological systems. Self-kindness activates what is known as the mammalian care system. When mothers care for babies, oxytocin releases. When we care for ourselves, the same system activates. And this isn't a metaphor, it's measurable, it's been tested in many studies. So, recognizing common humanity reduces that threat response. So, when you think you're uniquely broken, your brain interprets it as danger. Isolation is dangerous for social mammals like us. So, when you recognize everyone struggles, that threat turns off. Mindfulness, being present with the pain without over identification, keeps the stress response from spiraling. You feel the feeling, but you don't create a catastrophic story around it. Now, here's where it gets really practical. Studies show that self-compassion is more predictive of psychological well-being than self-esteem. That's huge. Self-esteem is fragile. It depends on comparing yourself to others, on achieving things, on validation. And when you feel your self-esteem crashes, so does your health. Again, inflammation, cortisol, all of the above. But self-compassion is stable. It doesn't depend on being better than others or achieving goals. You can be kind to yourself when you fail. In fact, that's exactly when you need to be kind to yourself. And because it's a stable practice, your stress level stays lower, which means better physical response. And the research on inflammation is particularly amazing. Chronic inflammation is linked to heart disease, diabetes, cancer, Alzheimer's, basically all major killers. And self-criticism drives inflammation. Self-compassion reduces it. Why? Because chronic self-judgment keeps your body in a constant state of threat. And when your body thinks it's life or death, it prepares for injury by ramping up inflammation. That's helpful if you're being chased by a predator, but devastating if it is chronic. So when you practice self-compassion, you're literally telling yourself and your immune response, relax, we are safe, and it does. And this convergence between the scientific and spiritual is very interesting in this modern society. Ancient masters and modern health researchers have discovered the same thing, or have pointed us to the same thing. How you talk to yourself matters, not just psychologically, but physically. A Buddhist teacher might say, meet your suffering with kindness and suffering decreases. A scientist might say, self-compassion reduces cortisol, inflammation, and improves your health outcomes. Same reality. Both recognize this body and mind aren't separate. Both observe the internal kindness creates external health. Both have developed practices to cultivate this. The mechanisms the scientists may have uncovered, the threat response, the care system, the vagus nerve, the inflammation cascade, that's not contradicting anything what we know from the spiritual realms. It's explaining why the teaching works. And here's what I found most useful and hopeful. You don't need to believe in any spiritual framework to benefit. You don't need to call it metta or loving kindness, even. You just need to try to speak to yourself the way you'd speak to someone you care about. And notice what happens to your health. Because your body is listening on how you talk to yourself. And it responds accordingly. All right, practice time. Let's make this real. I'm going to give you 3 practices, one from modern psychology, one from ancient traditions, and one that combines both. Each one backed by research and centuries of practice. So sit back and let's practice. Practice 1. The self-compassion break. Here's what you do. First, place your hand on your heart. Sounds cheesy, but physical touch actually activates the care system faster than anything else. So you're literally soothing yourself the way you touch someone you're comforting. And then say these 3 things out loud or silently. And this practice is good when you made a mistake, or when you're struggling, or when you're suffering. So the first thing you say out loud or silently is, this is a moment of suffering, or this is really hard right now. You're just acknowledging what's true. And that's bringing mindfulness, seeing clearly without exaggerating or minimizing. Then, suffering is part of being human. Or, I am not alone in this. Or, everyone struggles sometimes. You're recognizing common humanity. You're not uniquely broken. You're having normal human experiences. And then, may I be kind to myself? Or may I give myself the compassion I need? You're offering yourself kindness instead of judgment. That's it. 3 statements, takes about 30 seconds. You can do this multiple times a day. Whenever you notice you're being harsh with yourself, whether you're struggling or whether you need a little bit of guidance. Why this works? You're hitting all parts of the self-compassion triangle. You're taking care of the care system. You're down-regulating the threat response. Your body registers everything is taken care of, or I am safe. Even though that someone is you who's providing the safety. Practice 2. The traditional Metta Meditation. This is the 2,500-year-old practice adapted for us in modern life. Set aside some 5 minutes. That's all you need to start. Sit comfortably. Close your eyes if you want. Take a few deep breaths. Remembering last episode on the breath. Notice the breathing, and then simply repeat these phrases, directing them to yourself. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be safe. May I be peaceful. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be safe. May I be peaceful. Just keep repeating them gently for as long as you need. Let them sink in. Don't worry if you're doing it for the first time, it will feel awkward. Or if you don't believe them yet, you're planting seeds. If it's too hard to direct this to yourself right now, and for many people it may be the case, start with someone you really love. Picture them. Say the phrases for them. Then, as you get comfortable, start with 1 minute. Bring attention back to yourself. And do this daily for a week. Morning is a good time, sets the tone for the day. Before bed too, helps with sleep. So there are many times you can do this. Practice 3. Now we reframe our self-critical thoughts. This is the most practical moment-to-moment practice. You can do this all day long. Here's how it works. Notice, first of all, when you are being harsh on yourself. The voice might say things like, I'm so stupid. I always mess everything up. I'm such a failure. Everyone else does it better than me. And when you catch that voice, pause. Simply pause. Bring an attitude of non-judgment for being self-critical. If you criticize your criticism, it becomes more critical. So just notice it, then ask, what would I say to a good friend who was thinking this about themselves? You wouldn't say, yeah, you're right, you're terrible. You probably say something like, hey, everyone makes mistakes. Hey, you're being really hard on yourself. Hey, this is just one situation, not your entire life. Hey, you're doing the best you can right now with what you've got, and you are improving. So say these to yourself instead, out loud if possible, or at least in your mind. And even when you're saying it in your mind, say it so that you can really hear it. Use your name if that helps. And research shows actually when you use third person, self-talk is actually more effective. So say things like, Nikhil, you're being really hard on yourself right now. Don't say Nikhil. You can use your name. Why it works? You're interrupting the threat response before it cascades. You're giving the nervous system a different message, and over time that rewires to become your self-talk default. It takes time and practice, so just be patient with it. But that's what we do here, patience. And keep track with a simple log if you can. When you notice a critical thought and reframe it, just note it. Critical thought about work, mistake. Compassionate reframe about being human. You're training yourself to notice and to respond differently. So, how to track your progress and results? Pay attention to these things over the next few days. Your inner dialogue, is it getting gentler as you practice? Physical tension, do you notice your body relaxing when you're self-compassionate? Sleep quality, self-compassion often improves sleep. Energy levels, Chronic self-criticism is exhausting. So how often do you get common colds and coughs, etc.? That's another way to see how your immunity is working. So don't expect perfection. Some days will be harder than others. The practice is to keep returning to kindness over and over. So let me address the biggest objection people have. But if I'm kind to myself, won't I be lazy and self indulgent? And the answer is no, absolutely not. Research and many practices, individual practices, have shown the opposite. Self compassion increases motivation because you are not paralyzed by fear of failure. When you know you'll be kind to yourself, you start to take risks. You start to look forward to failing. You're more willing to try. I don't deserve kindness. I really did mess up. Kindness isn't about deserving, it's about being human. Do you think people deserve to suffer because they are imperfect? Then why would you think that about yourself? Next one is, this feels fake. I don't believe it. Good, you're being honest. You don't have to believe it yet. Just practice it and see. The belief follows the practice, not the other way around in these situations. It doesn't work for me. It's not working. I still feel bad. Self-compassion and kindness doesn't make pain disappear. It makes the story around it lighter. That is a very good distinction we should keep in mind. This is not going to get rid of all the problems in the life you face. It is how you turn up for those problems. You'll still feel sad. You'll still feel disappointed. You'll still feel frustrated sometimes. But you won't add that extra layer of, and I am terrible for feeling this way. So these are some common objections. You may have your own objections. If you find some, please do share them. And here's what we've discovered today so far. Loving kindness towards yourself improves physical health. Full stop. In both spiritual wisdom and in the scientific literature, it's a fact. So whether you're practicing metta or applying self-compassion techniques, whether you're thinking about the care system or just being decent to yourself, your body responds. Your immune system improves. Your inflammations decrease. Your stress hormones drop. Your cells age more slowly. And this is no longer woo-woo. This is biology, physiology, spirituality. So here's the challenge. Pick one of these practices. Try it for 7 days. Notice what changes in your mood, in your body, in how you relate to yourself. And then next time, we will go to another statement and ask ourselves, is this science or spirituality? And the answer is going to shift how you see yourself and how you practice. So until then, be kind to yourself, not because you've earned it, not because you're perfect, but because you're human. And that's enough. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you again next time. Take it easy.